What's up?
We're back, baby. It's the Horns Up Talking Texas podcast. I was letting it, sometimes it buffers when we start. So I was giving it a little zhuzh at the beginning, but we're back. It's National Signing Day. Joshua Fisher, DJ, Nikki, Snacks, Kreider, Alex Tosmir is on an aeroplane back to Texas. So he will be in the motherland very shortly. National signing period, the early period, obviously February still rolls around. That's another period where guys could sign and they could obviously sign and commit throughout. But really massive day for us. There were some rumblings last night that Ryan Wingo would be gone and heading back to Mizzou, we're heading to Mizzou, his hometown team. But we woke up this morning. He didn't. He was still asleep. His father said he's still sleeping. And when he woke up, he rise and shine, baby. Instead of rise and shine, we got a little rise and shine out of Ryan Wingo, which was massive. And you know what? My thought process in this was I would have understood if he went to Mizzou. I would have gotten it. Like they have Luther Burden this year, who was a top recruit.
It's a hometown team too.
Hometown team. And Mizzou had a great year. Luther Burden had a great year in that system. So I would have understood. And they've had a really good recruiting year too. And the transfer portal, they just picked up a big guy the big lineman from OU. So they've been on top of it, especially in the transfer portal. Mizzou and Eli Drinkowitz has done a really nice job in reviving the Mizzou program. So I would have gotten it if Ryan Wingo flipped his commitment. But nonetheless, we nab him. We nab Brandon Baker, who hadn't signed yet, an offensive tackle from California. And not only are those two massive recruits that can really come in and play right away and contribute right away, hopefully Wingo a bit more than Baker, who we have a good offensive line. But again, the best player plays in Sark's system. But it's great to see that not only are we doing great in our backyard, great in transfer portal, but we're doing great nationwide. Like you said, Nick, Ryan Wingo, his hometown team is Mizzou. He's from St. Louis. Brandon Baker's from California. These are guys that are not Texas-grown dudes, but yet Sark and co are able to go out and not just get the best players in Texas, but the best players in the nation.
Yeah. Like Amari Winston in the 2024 class at tight end. He's from Calhoun, Georgia. So it's great. I mean, you want to be that type of program that can recruit from any part of the country. But yeah, on Ryan Wingo, pretty funny this morning, the report saying his father said he's just still sleeping. A well-deserved night's rest, honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot to think about. I mean, it's probably the biggest decision that he's ever made in his life, at a young age, only being a high school senior. It's a huge decision, at the end of the day, like you're deciding where you want to play, where you want to go to college for the next 3 years and where you want to earn your money, where you want to potentially grow your stock to get to the next level.
Absolutely.
So it's a huge decision to make, and he deserves that night of rest. But ultimately, it fell in our favor, which is nice. The only thing that I was concerned about was that, obviously, we're going after so many wide receivers. Matthew Golden had committed. We have Jonte, we have Dante Moore, we have Ryan Niblett already. There's rumors that we're going after Evan Stewart still in the transfer portal. So it does worry me a little bit sometimes when guys see other guys come in, but we say it all the time, best player plays. And obviously there's rooms sometimes that get filled up that, you look at Bama when they had Ruggs, Judy, Devontae Smith, they just turn guys out. But at the end of the day, if we run 3 wide receivers in a set or if we do spread and we run 4 wide receivers in a set, only 4 guys play, only 3 guys play. So, I do want to continue to see us get these high level recruits, but I don't want us to get overly greedy, you know what I mean, and dip our hands in too many different pools and scare people off.
Sure. I mean, again, that's what happens. If you overcommit and you get a lot of guys, then guys start decommitting and start transferring, and you set that cycle into your. Look, guys are always going to leave. Guys are always going to transfer. Guys are always going to decommit and flip. We lost Aaron Hampton, who was an athlete. He's been committed to us since August. He flipped from us, 4-star guy, to Alabama. That could happen. But you don't want to set that precedent. You look across the board, you don't want a day like Florida had. I don't think we'll have one of those, knock on wood, going down in the future. Florida lost all their guys, and they might lose DJ Lagway, who's the top guy they had, quarterback. He's from Texas, but he could be going to USC. Lincoln Riley is recruiting his ass off to get him over there, especially after losing Malachi Nelson, former 5-star top recruit in the transfer portal. So they had a really tough day, and you saw other guys, like A&M had, they had that sick recruiting class, but they couldn't put together wins. We've seen people comment on our stuff for the past couple of days on Texas Sports Unfiltered, our 3rd day there. Shout out to you guys. Happy to be here. one of the things that people have been commenting on our videos, winning cures all. And it's just the long and short of it. If you win, it cures all. You could have the best recruiting class in the world, but if you don't put it together on the field, it does not matter.
Nope.
So I think Sark continuing to put it together on the field. Our buddy Toss, who's not here, and I would love for him to kind of defend himself, maybe. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but he, in our group text, he was talking about wanting bigger bodies, like on the offensive side of the football in the skill position area to bring in, especially if we're going to lose Jay Witt, if we lose AD, if we lose Sanders. But at the same time, I think maybe you agree with me, Nick. Sark is going to scheme to our players and he's going to work to our players. And it wouldn't surprise, like, let's say best case scenario, we lose Quinn 2 next year to the draft because we win the national championship. If Archer's under center and we have Brooks back and we have Baxter there, we could be a run first team. Our offense could look completely different than it did this year.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, like you look at programs, and I know this is like the cream of the crop, but when I mentioned Bama had Ruggs, Judy, and Smith,
Yeah.
they're not big guys. I think Judy's probably the tallest guy on like the three of those guys, and what is he barely 6'1", maybe? So I mean, I think in college, like skill always beats out size. When you get to the pros, like size definitely matters a little bit more. Those guys all did get drafted in the first round, but at the end of the day, you want the most skilled position possible, at wide receiver. You want the fastest guy. You want the guys that create the most separation. You want the guys who have good hands and are reliable. And all the guys that we've gone after so far, speed, lots of speed, great
I was
route
about
running,
to
great
say,
hands.
yeah.
And with Sark's offense, you can just open them up, over the top because let's be honest, like college secondary players are nowhere near as talented as NFL secondary players. That's why it's so easy to miss in the draft on cornerbacks. How many times have we seen NFL draft picks become busts at corner in the first round? I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's probably the second most busted position besides quarterback, right?
Mhm.
I mean, we say it all the time. It's probably the hardest position to play in the NFL is covering wide receivers. So, you know, these corners and these safeties that are in college football that aren't as necessarily gifted as our wide receivers who are going first round, second round, you can just beat them with speed. You can beat them with just getting open. And
Yeah.
so I don't mind us, going after the smaller guys and the more shifty guys. I mean, Golden is like your perfect example right there. I mean, we talk about how the biggest weakness of our team this year was our secondary, and he scored 2 touchdowns on us.
Absolutely. And, quotations weakness because we still love our secondary. And, we could debate size versus skill till the cows come home, but any level of football, what's the one rule? Speed kills.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like you go,
Yeah,
who's the
no.
best player who's the best receiver in the NFL right now?
Tyreek Hill, Cheetah, fastest
Five,
guy in the league.
5'9",
Yeah.
5'10". Like how big is he? Like not that
And I
big.
also think that just, like, the way that the game is played has changed a little bit as well in
Sure.
terms of how they, because I'm sure, like, back in the day, in, the '80s, '90s, early 2000s, they get oohed and awed, and they
Yeah.
look at these big framed wide receivers, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I want that guy, go up and get him." And then, Tyreek Hill would not even probably gotten consideration. They probably would have thought, "Okay, you're at best a punt returner," you know? Barry Sanders was ahead of his time being, so small that he was at running back, and then we start seeing guys open up the door a little bit more. Darren Sproles, Danny Woodhead, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, like those aren't huge guys. I mean,
Sure.
McCaffrey is pretty stacked, but at the end of the day, like they're short guys. And so I think the way that the game is played, just kind of how coverages are aligned nowadays, and how you can also figure out ways to open up your offense rather than just going deep like Randy Moss and Megatron. But yes, really successful day. When you see almost every single player in your class has signed and then is expected to be an early enrollee next year, as I mentioned yesterday. Those spring football days are so important for a team to glue together, to mesh together, for you to figure out who your guys are for next year, who's going to take the steps forward to be in the starting position rotation. I mean, I guarantee you we're probably going to have like at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 freshmen start next year.
I don't hate that.
It's completely plausible.
Yeah, but to me, like, who are the freshmen that have started in recent memory, though? Anthony Hill has been productive, Malik Muhammad's, but those are two guys we've been singing their
Yep.
praises all year.
Ethan
I,
Burke,
I mean, Ethan, he's a sophomore, but yeah, okay,
oh,
underclassman, yeah. But how about Bijan played as a freshman? Xavier Worthy had arguably his best
Baxter.
year. Baxter, yeah, Worthy had arguably his best year as a freshman. So like, and I know Quinn was a redshirt freshman, but he was still a freshman last year. So, and then we Banks played as a freshman and was great.
Yeah.
So like, We'll return 4 out of 5 guys in the offensive line, presumably next year, which heading to the SEC is exactly what you want. And that was one of our strongest positions this year. But a guy like Brandon Baker, he could replace Christian Jones. He could slot in at right tackle. It's perfectly plausible.
100%, and that'd be awesome, especially heading to the SEC with the big boys that they got in the trenches. Um, Recruiting's not over though. At the end of the day, we still have guys that we want to go after in the transfer portal. Trey Moore, any day now, I feel like he can sign with us. The edge out of UTSA. As I mentioned, Evan Stewart recently put his name in the portal. Probably the worst kept secret that was happening at A&M.
Sure.
I mean, poor A&M, they're losing people left and right, and I know their little brother, but it is sad to see them kind of lose everyone left and right. To our dismay, but Terry Bussey's a guy that I think we can keep an eye on. I think, we mentioned we lost Hampton, but Bussey's another athlete. He is not a transfer, but he is a 2024 recruit right now who's an athlete, 5-star that's committed to A&M, but he's planning on signing in February. So we've got plenty of time to sway him over here. And I'm just going to read you his stats really quickly because it is mind boggling. So as a quarterback in 2022, he threw for 2,100 yards and 26 touchdowns, 64% completion percentage. Not bad. But he also rushed for almost 2,600 yards for 46 touchdowns. He averaged 14 yards per carry. And then he also lined up on defense to add the cherry on top, where he tallied 115 tackles and 5 interceptions, with 4 of them being touchdowns. So this is Mr. Do-It-All. You had mentioned that he draws comparisons to Travis Hunter on Colorado. And honestly, like, if you bring this guy over, like, why not let him, do it on both sides of the ball, here and there. He doesn't have to start, both
Miles Jack.
sides. But yeah, exactly. Miles Jack did it for UCLA. But like, they draw comparisons, On3 has his comparison to Trent McDuffie on the Chiefs out of Washington, because they're both dual side athletes. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think guys like this end up transitioning to cornerback pretty well, just because, as I mentioned, it's the hardest position to play and you want the best athletes out there. But if he's finding the end zone as much as he does, I mean, I'd be hard pressed not to put him in our offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, and that's a guy that he's probably going to sign in February. He's a hard commit to A&M. And I say this to you guys all the time, on air, off there. Like, I feel bad for A&M, but at the end of the day, outside of Texas, the state of Texas, A&M is not as relevant as people think. They just are not. Like, they are a Texas relevant team. Outside of Texas, they're not that relevant of a team other than Johnny Manziel. I didn't like growing up on Long Island. Like, I have no, outside of Manziel and a couple of the guys like Von Miller and Miles Garrett. And Miles Garrett, by the time I got to school, outside of that, I have no real A&M.
Yeah, exactly. I thought, you have to give the people context who don't know. Like, for myself and for Toss and for Quan, we all grow up in Texas. And so
100%.
like, when you're going up in high school and elementary school, like, the teams that are in front of you all the time are University of Texas, A&M, Texas Tech, Baylor, even Texas State for some people in the Central Texas area. And for someone like you, or people who grew up in California or Florida or wherever, like, A&M really isn't relevant. They've become a little more relevant in recent years as they moved on to the SEC, especially in the Southeast region for all the kids in Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, as I mentioned. But to someone in New York, A&M for you is just Johnny Manziel, right? Like,
That's it. No, that really is it. It's not like growing up in the real quick in the Northeast, Texas is a team. When we talk about, I knew who Quan was. I know who that is. And we love Q, but Q's not he's not Von Miller, I know who he is because Texas is such a relevant program. He's one of the better players on the team.
But also, you mentioned winning Curzall and winning that national championship with Vince Young. The 05-06 national championship helps you as 11-year-old kid, 12-year-old kid say, okay, I know Texas, I know these players. I want to
LSU. I knew who Matt Flynn was before, and he wasn't a world beater in the NFL. Did it with Chris Leak didn't even make the NFL. Jason White doesn't even make the NFL, but he's a Heisman winner, and he, and you know who Oklahoma is. You didn't know who A&M was, So I think, it's sad to see this happen. But as somebody who's not as beholden to the Texas A&M and didn't grow up hearing that, the Aggies being uttered every other sentence by some of their friends, Yeah, I'm like, okay, like fine. Like I get why
Yeah.
people don't want to go there. They don't win and it's not cool. It's
Yeah.
lame. Like it's really I didn't even know about the yell or whatever they
Midnight Yell.
do. Yeah, I
Yeah,
had no idea.
it's a big cult. We all know that.
Yeah. Cold. Yeah, man, but it's a really, really successful day for Sark and the boys.
Keep it
And
rolling. We got another 2025 recruit too. So we're not stopping here. I mean, I know that we're looking at the 2024 season, and I know that we were always looking to get transfers in here, but we can't forget about the other classes as well. We just got a big boy, Brandon Brown, D lineman out of Melbourne, Florida. So keep on building those
Florida, baby.
trenches. We already mentioned we had Imari Winston out of Georgia, and then to round out the class, he committed in June. But KJ Lacey is a quarterback out of Bama,
Yeah.
Saraland, Alabama. So, and they're all rated right now as 4 stars. But as we've seen in years prior, and as we've seen how this recruiting goes, like guys can jump and fall, depending on their development, on how they
Yeah. They have to
play.
play their senior year.
They're still growing. I mean, like as men, like these are 17-year-old, 16-year-old kids. Like they might add a couple inches in size. Like right now, Imari Winston's listed at 6'3", and he's heading into his he's a junior right now. So like if you add like let's say an inch or two, like it's a 6'5" tight end coming in, I think he might jump up a star.
100%. And then I will say this. Um, the last thing I'll say is this. I'm happy that we did so well today and did so well this recruiting cycle. I'm glad though that today is the end of it, like for the signing period, and we can now move. Sark can lock in on Washington. And for better or for worse, like we haven't heard or seen much of Washington in the recruiting outside of like Will Rogers.
I mean,
So like,
but I think that's to be expected. Like Washington doesn't recruit like Texas does. You don't see
yeah.
Washington in the top, 10 every year in recruiting cycles. So it is what it is. I do think we're still focused. I mean, obviously, we don't see what's
Oh, for
behind closed
sure.
doors on like what the team is preparing for, but like our active players on the roster right now don't like they're not involved in the recruiting game. Besides, Arch has been vocal. Like there's been guys who've been vocal, but their mindset is on the game. I mean, they're ultimately we've got seniors, we've got juniors who might not be on this team next year. They can give two shits about recruiting right now. They want to focus on this game in New Orleans.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And we have all our coaches back, even the ones that have moved on to greener pastures next year. So I'm excited that we get to move on from recruiting and get the wheels turning and go try to dominate Washington, which is perfectly in our wheelhouse. But again, like we can't say it enough. Really great execution, start to finish, on and off the field by Sark and Co. Winning cures all, not just in football, but we saw women's volleyball again. Shout out to them. Women's and men's diving and swimming, killing it. Men's basketball is the lowest ranked team right now behind golf at 14. Men's basketball is 19. It's like the lowest ranked team we got because football's 3. So it's pretty magical.
Yeah, love it.
Pretty
Christmas
all right.
coming early.
That it is. Well, I will see you tomorrow with Q, with Toss. Q's jumping back on.
And special guest.
We won't be going live, but we will have a special guest for you guys, which is very exciting. So, hook 'em horns. See you guys next time. We out you. We love you. Just a nice little friendly reminder. This show is brought to you by who, Nick?
BetOnline.ag. Go to betonline.ag to get 50% off your welcome bonus when you use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. BetOnline.ag, your ultimate sports book for any type of betting. They've even got a casino. If you want to hit the blackjack table, hit the roulette table, be our guest. BetOnline.ag.